This is Melissa. It is the 19th of July, 2026, and I hope that you are all doing very well. I wanted to just mention a couple of things, and the first is that today we had another really good meeting, Zoom meeting of the book club covering Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma. We covered the degrees 9 through 16. And those of you who are on Substack, that is a behind a paywall feature, but you're able to follow along if you're not able to be there. We put the recordings up, and Graham has been helping me with these on this particular book by making the videos for these, and it's good. I've done a couple of extra talks covering just some of my thoughts as I'm learning, and I wanted to say that I'm finding studying this book to be really helpful in having a deeper understanding of Alan's Cutting Through books, which we will cover next in the book club. And I had the idea about a month and a half ago or so to intersperse studying Alan's books with different Freemasonic texts. What I'm learning is it's just a very succinct way to understand an ancient system, the ancient control system. So mentioning that there, and then also to sort of get it out of the way, that your support it's essential for me to keep going, and I really appreciate it. You can visit cuttingthroughthematrix.com. And there is a link there for Stripe. It's possible to have a subscription of any amount, small, medium, large, that is a monthly subscription. And you can click on that and figure that out. Or you can make a one-time donation, or you can use Stripe to order the books, discs, and flash drives. And also, if you live within the U.S., you can use Cash App, which is a very quick, easy, and convenient way to support me. And I still have flash drives, and I have plenty of the second edition of the Cutting Through books. So help yourself. Also, free downloads, audios, transcripts, thousands of talks, really, that are there for you for free downloads. So your support is just a way of paying for the infrastructure and keeping it all going. And I greatly appreciate it. And I do appreciate hearing from you. I got something this week. I've been complaining that not many of you are writing, and that's true. But I hadn't heard from Prince for a while. He's preparing to take a trip to see his brother back east. And so he's been busy working a part-time job. And he sent me a box of seeds that you can just throw out on the side of the road, wildflower seeds, a mix. So I'll be happy. He said, plant some flowers. And then he put a card in there with some recommended talks of Alan's for me to listen to. And he said, I don't have his note right in front of me, but he said, Alan said over and over that he was here for the individual, that his work was to try to reach that rare individual who knew that they were somehow trapped in a system, and he could show a way out for that rare individual. And I think that many people are so acclimated to the system. Bill Cooper talked about socialism, cradle to grave. Alan talked about the cradle to grave. Cooper said you'll, come to love that, kind of father, mother taking care of you all the time, dictating to you what needs to be done next. That kind of control over you. But for those of you who are seeking a way out, I can think of no better map than the talks that Alan Watt has left for us in his writing. So again, cuttingthroughthematrix.com. I want to thank Stuart in England for cleaning up this audio. You will hear that, particularly on the host side, that's Kevin Smith, it still has a bit of a metallic sound, but it is greatly improved from the original. And I think that this is a really good talk. It's the second of two that Alan had with Kevin Smith. And there are lots of Kevin Smiths out there, including famous filmmaker Kevin Smiths, but I actually don't know what became of this Kevin Smith. I know that his website is defunct, and so I can't really tell you anything about him, unfortunately. But Alan did 2 talks with him, one in April of 2006, April 19, 2006, and the other was in June. And the cleaned up audio that I'm playing for you is about an hour and a half long, and it is June of 2006, and I don't have a transcript for it, unfortunately. It's always nice for me to be able to not just listen to a talk, but to read through it and, hear what they're talking about and kind of let that steer me in articles that I look up, etc. But there's no transcript for this one. But I thought as an extra for people who are following along in the study of morals and dogma, what I'll do is I'll post a link to the April talk as well. And that was a 2-parter. So the first talk that he had with Kevin Smith was 2 hours long, April 19. And then the one that I'm playing for you today is an hour and a half. So I will link to the audio and the transcript for that April talk. And that's kind of an extra for people who are reading along on morals and dogma, because in that one, they really got into, it's a good system overview, the ancient age of this system, and how science plays such a significant part, and Freemasonry and the British Empire, and all of this is covered in that talk from April. So that's just an extra. If you want to hear Alan talking quite a bit about Freemasonry, then this is something that you can listen to, as well as the one I'm putting up today. There are some things I'm not going to talk about. I'm just going to mention really quickly. I don't really want to talk about President Trump's speech, and I don't really want to talk about his earth-shattering news here of Chinese involvement in election fraud and rigging or whatever nonsense is, with absolutely no receipts, as they say. There's simply no evidence supplied. It's just Donald Trump keeping us safe from the big bad Chinese people. And nor do I necessarily think that I want to talk about how the U.S. and Iran are edging closer to a wider war because the U.S.-Iran truce has unraveled, and there's, the attacks on the Strait of Hormuz, or, all of this is incessantly in the news, and so you can seek that out yourself. I want to touch on a few things that are, in a way, mentioned within this talk that he has with Kevin Smith, but bring it up to date just a little bit. And there's one other thing that I want to say about retaining your individuality, because that, first of all, you can't retain it if you don't have it. So being an individual is something that you fight for, you work at, you uncover who you are. This is another one of the interesting things about studying morals and dogma. It is showing you how we are programmed through an ancient system. And I think it's very helpful to see how the programming works in order to help us deprogram. And my own experience is that this is something, I certainly do better in life and in my headspace, I guess you will, in my spirit and my heart with how I function if I'm always vigilant, if I'm always aware of the techniques that are being used on me. And one of those techniques I have covered quite a bit in the last few months, which is overwhelm, just hitting us with constant bombardment of data and things that we think that we need to know in order to, oh, it's cutting edge, it's news, it's wow, it's happening now. And I do try to sample a lot of things that are out there and just to get an idea of headspace, and especially in the so-called truth sphere. And there's one that comes into my inbox, obviously I said yes to that some time back, and I have never actually listened to this gentleman talk. I have in years past, but I haven't listened to him since he has his own new show. I've heard him with other people, but now he's on his own and has been for several years, and I haven't listened to his thing. And so I did, and the very first thing that I noticed was that he and his guest were talking at least 1.5 times speed. Now, I didn't make that selection. This was not on YouTube. I took it from his site, his offering, but clearly it was sped up. And there was someone who said about me once that they couldn't stand to hear me unless they sped me up at least 1.5 times because I just talk so slow. And, it's like, hurry up, lady, get to the point, and you're not saying anything, you're just talking really slow. I think that too is part of the overwhelm bombardment technique. In other words, you are being changed. I'm reminded I was reminded when somebody sent me a little reminder. Remember that Edward Bernays said, don't change the product to suit the person, the consumer. Change the consumer to suit the product. And so this is what's happening when you choose to listen to a talk at 1.5 or 2 times speed. And I know a lot of people who do that. Well, I can get more in. Well, can you? What are you actually absorbing? You're definitely contributing to rewiring your brain, but you're also contributing to, impatience, some qualities that aren't actually necessarily good for absorbing and understanding truth. So I just found that to be interesting. Now, the content of what they were talking about gave me a big yawn because it was, the founding fathers, and we're a republic, not a democracy, and, this is what we have to do, and we have to... It's very tired territory that was being covered at 2 times speed. So that is what I don't want to be guilty of, being part of that problem. And I have said that before, just take some breathers and do different things. And so this week I've been eating a lot of fruit because it's hot outside. And I enjoyed a leisurely outing with my Aunt Betty. She had many errands to run yesterday, and I just, made it for myself a kind of relaxed and enjoyable day instead of rushing from place to place. And got a big watermelon and had lots of watermelon last night, and she came over today and we ate watermelon. And I like summertime for the fruit. In part, it's just nice to have cherries and grapes and good summertime fruit. And that was just me saying out loud that in a system that is inhumane and brutal, and has lots of challenges for us all. We all have lots of challenges, hurdles with health, family, loved ones, finances. It's kind of, once more into the breach. There's a bit of a daily struggle that we're engaged in. And I'm just reminding myself that it's when we talk at a slower rate, when we slow ourselves down and enjoy some of the good things that are there for us in life, that has a perceptible, very real effect on my brain waves, on how I go through the day and how I sleep at night. So eat some watermelon and plant some flowers. Now, just quickly, I wanted to mention a couple of things that will come up in this talk between Alan and Kevin. Silicon chips on the brain. Researchers announce a new generation of brain-computer interface. This is from Columbia Engineering, so it's university-level writing. This is from December of last year. Fabricated as a single chip, the new implant is orders of magnitude faster and smaller than today's state-of-the-art brain-computer interfaces, offering an opportunity for more efficacious treatment of a number of neurological conditions. Right, because that's why they're doing it, because they want to help injured people. A new brain implant stands to transform human-computer interaction and expand treatment possibilities for neurological conditions such as epilepsy, spinal cord injury, ALS, stroke, and blindness, helping to manage seizures and restore motor, speech, and visual function. This is done by providing a minimally invasive, high-throughput information link directly to and from the brain. The transformational potential of this new system lies in its small size and ability to transfer data at high rates. They're going to tell you who's developing it. This brain-computer interface, BCI, relies on a single silicon chip to establish a wireless, high-bandwidth connection between the brain and any external computer. The platform is called the Biological Interface System to Cortex, BISC. So let's see here. It includes a single chip implant, a wearable relay station, and the custom software required to operate the system. Most implantable systems are built around a canister of electronics that occupies enormous volumes of space inside the body, says Ken Shepard. Our implant is a single integrated circuit chip that is so thin that it can slide into the space between the brain and the skull, resting on the brain like a piece of wet tissue paper. Isn't that nice? Shepard was joined in the BISC effort by senior and co-corresponding author Andreas S. Tolius, Ph.D. at the Byers Eye Institute at Stanford University, and co-founding director of the Enigma project. Tolius is pioneering work training AI models on large-scale neural data sets, including data sets recorded in the Tolius laboratory using BISC, enabled the team to evaluate the device's neural decoding performance. BISC turns the cortical surface into an effective portal, delivering high bandwidth, minimally invasive read-write communication. Think about that, read-write. With AI and external devices. This is what the brain chip is, but do you really want something? It's bad enough reading, but do you really want something writing to your brain surface? So, minimally invasive read-write communication with AI and external devices. Its single-chip scalability paves the way for adaptive neuroprosthetics and brain AI interfaces to treat many neuropsychiatric disorders, such as epilepsy. All right, this is lengthy, and I'll post that and let you look at it. There is something that I want to read a little bit of, and I'll link to it, from October of last year, from Forbes magazine, The Past, Present, and Future of Brain-Computer Interfaces. We stand at the cusp of a massive technology paradigm shift that promises to transform human civilization. Sam Altman and Elon Musk are building rival companies to compete over what will be one of the biggest market opportunities in history. No, we are not talking about generative AI. We are not talking about OpenAI and XAI. We are talking about brain-computer interfaces. Musk's Neuralink and Altman's newly launched Merge Labs are among a handful of companies at the forefront of this fast-moving field. To most people, brain-computer interfaces, BCI, sound like science fiction, but this technology is getting real quickly. BCI is nearing an inflection point in terms of real-world functionality, though most people haven't realized it yet. Before long, these products will be ready for mainstream use and will begin to spread through society. Far-fetched though it may sound, capabilities like telepathy will soon be possible. One reason why BCI matters so much is that it will play a central role in defining how human intelligence and artificial intelligence fit together in a world with powerful AI. Now is the time to start paying serious attention to this field. The trillion-dollar question, invasive versus non-invasive BCI. Brain-computer interfaces are technologies that enable humans to interact directly with digital devices and the outside world, using their minds. BCI is not one product or one technology. It is an entire discipline encompassing various technical approaches, sensor types, capabilities, and use cases. It includes both technologies that can interpret what is happening in the brain, i.e., read from the brain, and technologies that can change what is happening in the brain, i.e., write to the brain. Products that enable you to control your computer using only your thoughts, products that send personalized electrical pulses to your brain to make you focus better or sleep better, products that can instantly translate your thoughts into written text, products that can enable blind people to see, products that can treat conditions like depression or OCD or PTSD by directly modifying your brain's activity. These are all examples of BCI products under development today. BCI is not a new field. The first successful demonstration of a brain-computer interface in a human came in 1973, when participants in a UCLA study directly controlled a cursor on a computer screen with their minds based on EEG signals. Today, when most people think of brain-computer interfaces, they think of Neuralink, the BCI company launched by Elon Musk in 2016. Though it was not the first and is not the only BCI startup, Neuralink has played a central role in advancing this field in recent years. A fundamental divide lies at the heart of the field of BCI: invasive methods versus non-invasive methods. In order to understand this technology and its future, it is essential to understand this divide. Invasive approaches to BCI entail putting electronics inside the skull, directly in or on the brain. They require surgery. Most frequently, the surgery is a craniotomy, which involves cutting open the skull to implant a BCI in the brain. Neuralink is the most well-known example of an invasive BCI company. The term implantable is sometimes used as a more neutral alternative to invasive, and I'll just say here that I have long thought that Neuralink was is more or less a publicity stunt. You've got this chip the size of a, oversized quarter. I mean, it's quite large. I just, and the first article that I read you, it's like a wet tissue on the brain, paper thin, tissue thin. Non-invasive approaches, on the other hand, do not require a medical procedure. They rely on sensors that sit outside the skull, say on a headband or a hat, to collect and interpret signals from the brain. Even this, I'll say, let's give it to the sheep slowly. Don't want to scare them. Don't want to startle them. Let's just feed it to them quite slowly. I think I'll just share a little exchange that I had with someone earlier in the day. We were discussing someone who puts out some information that is in part useful, but they seem to have a blind spot there that the technologies, the hidden levels of science that Alan talked about, that we are perhaps miles beyond what they reveal to us. And this person wrote, because slowly releasing technological advancements is a perfectly, quote, engineered system to change people without them even realizing it. Social engineering. So everything that we study on the internet is given to us by intel agencies. So Alan has long talked about how our searches online are customized for us. So we're given something that's crafted, and we like to believe what I think is the lie, that this is cutting edge. I think we're much further than that. The divide between invasive and non-invasive methods boils down to a trade-off between accessibility, how easy the technology is for people to use, and signal quality, how detailed and accurate the information exchanged between the brain and computer can be. Cutting open the skull to implant a BCI in the brain is a high-risk, high-cost undertaking. It represents a major barrier to the technology's widespread adoption. But conventional wisdom has long held that invasive methods are the only path to building the most sophisticated brain-computer interfaces, because non-invasive approaches simply cannot provide sufficiently high-fidelity information about brain activity. In recent years, innovations in hardware and in AI have begun to challenge this conventional wisdom. High-performing sensors are unlocking richer brain data non-invasively. More importantly, powerful new AI technologies are making it possible to extract greater signal from this data. If non-invasive methods can approach parity in performance with invasive methods, there is little doubt that they will win out, given how much easier they are to adopt. This goes on for quite a bit, this Forbes article that I'm reading from. It's well worth you taking the time to read it, though. If it's a 20-minute read, I do recommend it. I am also going to stop talking shortly here, because this, as I said, is an hour-and-a-half talk that Alan Watt and Kevin Smith have. I will link also, though, to some articles about data centers and water usage. And some of these are they're relatively new. There's one about NVIDIA, the chip maker. This is from last month, saying they've found a system that eliminates pretty much all water usage, but that's only in the plant itself. That's not what leads up to the plant. I will link to the kind of extra Kevin Smith talk there for you that has not been cleaned up by Stuart. And I really appreciate, again, those of us who are accustomed to better sound and don't remember the dark ages of shortwave radio and when everyone wasn't doing face-to-face Zoom calls with nice external microphones attached to their setup. So it was a different world then. But these are conversations well worth hearing. And like I said, that extra one that I will give you from April really gets into some histories that are interesting, not just on Freemasonry, but on other things. So if you want to dig into that this week, you can as well. What, in closing, that I wanted to say is that we're not to just consume, and stuff ourselves full of data, because we're actually doing the job of making ourselves part of the system in a mechanized worldview. You could say a cog in a wheel, or just another firing neuron in a complex neural web. But the Greek philosopher Plutarch, I like this quote from him, said, "The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled." We already have within us all that we need. And sometimes it's just being quiet and taking the time and the space, and instead of going at 1.5 or 2 times speed in our thinking and our talking, slow it down and enjoy these moments, because that's actually all we have. So have a good week, take care, and thank you for listening and for your support.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alan Watt appears on radio talk shows frequently. You have heard him on this show. You have heard him on other shows. And you have requested that we invite him to come back and talk with you again. And that's what we've done. And I'm absolutely delighted that he's here with us. Alan, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be on. Yeah.
Okay, you're hearing an echo, aren't you?
I am.
And now you're not, are you?
That's better, yeah.
Okay. All righty then. Alan, first, solve a mystery for me. Now, I've seen your name as Alan Watts, and I've seen it as Alan Watts. Which is it?
The other Alan Watts is dead, so it's definitely not me. He was a philosopher. He was also into different religions back in the 50s up to the 70s. I think he died in 78. So
yours is with an S.
Just no S there. No.
No S.
No, when parts of the family go to England, they add the S on, and when they stay in Scotland, you don't put the S there.
Well, the last, and that brings up something. The last time you were here, we sort of jumped right into the subject matter and really didn't give you much opportunity to introduce yourself to the folks who are listening, and I think it's important. I think that they need to know a little bit about you and your background, or at least it would be helpful for them. You were born in Scotland.
Yeah.
And now you live in Canada, is that right?
That's right, Ontario. And for most of the time, well, for many, many years, I was a musician. Mixed with some up there groups, and did a lot of session guitar work and stuff. And I have written stuff as well in the past. And eventually I just got away from the whole world, basically, to do a lot of thinking and put so much together, because so much was happening that I sort of knew what was happening, but I had to get the evidence for it. And so I did a lot of research and ended up doing Sweet Liberty broadcasts on the shortwave beginning in 98. And it's just taken off from there.
You're still doing that, right?
Yeah, every Wednesday.
Is it available on the internet?
It is. It's on First Amendment Radio.
Okay, because a lot of folks would not live where they could pick up the shortwave broadcast. You do have to be in certain geographical areas to pick that up, right?
Yeah, that's right. In 2004, the First Amendment Radio took it as well on internet. And so it's been on every Wednesday on internet from then. But prior to that, I think it was all shortwave, yeah.
Unless I'm mistaken, you in the early stages of your life also spent some time working rather full time, I think, in the field of religion. Is that right?
Not working in it. I delved into it for sure. And in the music field as well, I find there was more religion there, but it was New Age. And of course, you'll find the higher up you go in music or entertainment, many people go into the OTO, which is a form of Freemasonry, but it's more New Agey. And it's made specifically really for the entertainment class, you might say. So I mixed with them all the time and saw a lot of what was going on.
What does the OTO stand for?
Aleister Crowley. So there's a bit of debate about whether he started it up, but he's given the credit in most books. Aleister Crowley, who also, when it's been declassified from Britain, he worked for the British government in the early 1900s. He began the Ordo Templi Orientis, which is a branch of Freemasonry, which again goes more into the Kabbalah, you might say, more mystical type stuff. And that's all through the entertainment industry.
Aleister Crowley is also given credit for being the father of modern Satanism.
I wouldn't even say that, to be honest. I think that's a bit overblown, a bit too much credit. He was involved with, I think really what to do in the higher orders, I'll probably loosely call Masonry. In the higher orders, they tend to branch off new sects of them for a new period, a new era, or a new function. And in his time, in Crowley's time, his was mainly to get into the entertainment and the writing industry. He did certainly train a couple of people. One of them did branch off into it was called Satanism. Crowley himself would not really be involved in that because he didn't follow really the old Christian or Judaic type religion.
Well, and that is a good point, and that is that Satanism is a flip side of Christianity.
You'll find all religions have the same exoteric and esoteric meanings. They're all dualistic, in a sense. That's the symbol of the chessboard. That's also the floor of the Masonic Hall. It's the black and white squares, the heaven and earth, spirit matter, the seen, the unseen.
So you reached a point in your life where you took some time out to start studying what's going wrong on the planet. Is that right?
Yeah, it wasn't so much what was going wrong. It's just that I knew from growing up in Britain, during a hell period, you might say, when we were deindustrializing Britain, and every year in the newspapers, prime ministers would meet with other countries and sign agreements to do with the free trade negotiations, as they kept calling it. And I knew they were amalgamating the whole of Europe. And it wasn't until, it was over and done with. And sure enough, now you had a European Parliament. Then the information was declassified that they'd planned this before the end of World War II. And that the public must not be told the truth until it was over and done. So when you live through that and you grow up basically watching unemployment everywhere during that period, Britain overtook Sweden for the suicide rate amongst the young, because Maggie Thatcher even went on television and said to the youth of Britain, she says, there's a generation growing up now who will never see work in their lifetime, so get used to it. What a future,
What is the benefit of that? I see we're seeing something similar to that, or at least it seems to me that we're seeing something similar to that in the United States with all the outsourcing.
Yes, absolutely. The world that they planned before World War I and II, and this can be traced back with the records of the CFR and the British counterpart, the Royal Institute of International Affairs. They planned a world, a united world of interdependence. which literally means to destroy sovereignty or nationalism. You have to make your economic system interrelated or interdependent on every other country. And that's when you see the outsourcing or parts of a vehicle made elsewhere. You couldn't, in other words, have the facilities to go to war on your own, ultimately. That really was the whole point of it, to tie us all up into this interdependent world, where a world government would make all the decisions for you.
Armand Hammer, a very, very famous industrialist, had close relations with the Soviet Union, did a lot of business with them. And I have seen him on television when he was alive, making the statement that he believed in world peace through business.
Yeah.
Is that what's behind this?
Yeah, Karl Marx was the first front man to be put out there. And that's another thing you find out the more you study, that most of the famous people in history are front men who don't come out spontaneously and say something or write something. It's that there are teams of people working behind them. And Marx himself said the same thing, that you'd have a tripartite world, three trading blocks, United Europe, United Americas, and a United Pacific Rim area under a super world government. And Marx wrote about that in the 1840s. And Armand Hammer, of course, we know that his dad was a radical communist and a backstreet abortionist. He was put in prison a few times for that. And even named his son Arm and Hammer. He sees Arm and Hammer, like the Soviet signal on the hammer. That was deliberate. And he was sent off from his family at the age of 5 to be trained in this world communistic system. And you see, in the West we think it's a working man's movement, and it never was. It was to be a movement of the ultra wealthy, and you find Albert Pike mentioned that in his own Morals and Dogma. To succeed through finance, to conquer through finance and take over. And Pike says, until we become masters over the masters of the world. And so these big organizations, monopolies, came into being, and Armand Hammer was trained for his role from the age of 5. He was given an apartment next door to Stalin, and he went back and forth during the whole time with no hindrance from either the U.S. or the Soviet bloc.
Yeah, I remember that he was very often in the Soviet Union. I was always very suspicious of him. And a lot of people didn't see any reason to be suspicious. But, one of the things that's interesting is that it's particularly obvious in our education system that almost everything that Marx said had to happen in order to make a society communist has taken place in the American education system. And in fact, today, America is more nervous as a nation about the word God than Russia is.
Yeah.
Russia, they're not particularly religious, but they believe, at least in practice, the freedom of children in their schools who do believe in God can pray.
Yeah.
But here, you have to pretend that the concept of God doesn't even exist.
Yeah. That's right.
And what's the purpose of that?
Well, they knew back in the 70s, and see the big outfits like Theosophy is another, it might say, a sect of Masonry. They did get a charter in the 1800s by the Grand Lodge in England. And Theosophy is based in New York for the United States. And they churned out books in the 70s, and even prior to that, about this coming world structure and the kind of religion that would evolve from it. And he mentioned that eventually the Soviet Union would fall, or appear to fall, but the old religion would never have the full grasp that it had before, so they're not worried about any resurgence on any big scale in Russia. And at the same time, they put books out saying that they would bring down the old Christian belief system. It was outdated. Now they must go into the scientific age. And now theosophy in the 1800s under Madame Blavatsky, another front person, they always send fronts out there. She said in her book that the purpose of theosophy was to blend or unite spirit and science together, meaning religion and science, or even the individual psyche, the soul, with science, which is ominous when you see where we're going, because the world we're going into...
That's what I was going to ask. Is that a bad thing?
Oh, it is, because it's a world. Now, if everything was the way they said it could be, we always take the optimistic side. But when we look at the other side of the coin, because there's always a dualistic system on the go here, they're looking at a world of total control of the individual. And what interested me was this oneness movement that theosophy was sent out into the world to create, that we're all one. And the money that's been spent by the biggest foundations on the planet, like the Carnegie and the Ford and the Rockefeller and many other foundations promoting this oneness movement, and all the encounter groups where you lose your identity, that's part of the purpose of it. And all the various so-called cults or sects. And now it's routine. They have these places in every main city on the planet. The whole purpose is to make you lose individuality in preparation for the next step, which is literally an implant, which will be fused into your nervous system, and which will be able to transmit signals directly to your brain. That's where it's going.
On this show, you and I talked about it when you were here before. I talked to Dr. Nick Begich about it as well. And then I've just read on my own some articles on the show about chip implants. And, I don't think that the American people, and I include Canada and the United States in that, I don't think that the American people any longer have the wherewithal and stamina and grit and backbone to stand up and say, not only no, hell no, we're not going to take a chip.
Yeah.
I think they'll just blindly submit and do it. What do you think?
I think that's where it's going. I mean, the one of the Loyola University meetings, and that was held in Louisiana 4 or 5 years ago, it was an international science meeting sponsored by the U.S. Department of Commerce. And the reason they sponsored this science meeting to do with an implant in the head was because they own us all. As we know, we're all there to serve their commercial system under the bankruptcy laws. And Newt Gingrich headed off that meeting. But they had professors from all over the world who never mentioned politics or governments once, which meant they were authorized. They knew the plan and the agenda. And he said that this chip is ready to go. The military ultimately will have the final authority to implant them against people who resist. They said regional computers are set up or will be set up, which will program everybody who gets the chip. However, to get the public to take the chip voluntarily, they would promote the good aspects of the chip. In other words, a feint, you might say. And they said this will be shown as a positive thing through cartoons, comics, movies, novels, etc., because it's primarily the younger people they want to get to. They bypass the parents. They make it a positive thing. And sure enough, it was after that meeting that the movie started to come out on Clockwork. Like the one about Final Cut, I think it was called. About the brain implant that records your whole life, and they would use it for funerals, etc. They started to show up so quickly.
What is the real purpose of chipping people?
Well, eventually you'll have what they said at the meeting, at this meeting, international meeting. What they said was, it will be the end of individuality as we know it. It will be impossible for an individual to even perceive of himself as having been an individual. He said, and the guy from Tokyo said, think of it more like the beehive. you'll hear the buzzing of other people's thoughts passing to and fro to central or regional computers. And immediately when that was said, I thought that he's talking about the Borg and Star Trek, because that's what they heard, these whispers. But it would definitely be,
In any situation like this, there's got to be someone at the top making decisions, and they obviously cannot be chipped and controlled.
You'll find that this plan written a long time ago by all the main philosophers, the front people for the establishment, that pushed for globalism, that pushed for regionalism and united parts of the planet. They all said the same thing, like Charles Galton Darwin, the grandson of Charles Darwin, in his book in the 1950s, called The Next Million Years. He puts forth this book determining you'd have to kill off vast populations of the world's, or people in the world's population, to save, not just to save the planet, but really to stop the lesser breeds, he called them, the commoners, from overtaking the elite, the intellectual elite. And he said they'd have to start sterilizing them or use any other means to start culling their numbers. But he also said eventually the time would come where the public will be controlled without their knowledge. And he said, we, the dominant minority who guide planet Earth, must retain our ability for self-preservation because they'll be making all the decisions. So he wrote about it in quite a thick book called The Next Million Years. And he was a physicist in Britain.
Well, do they not understand that when all the commoners are gone and there's nothing but elite, there are levels of elite, and there's nothing but elite?
That's right, because this is the traditional way of humankind. The big planners of things generally do cull off those that ring in their system when their purpose is over. The world that we're going to is definitely going to be a regimented system where the masses will have no mind of their own, and they're almost there today without a brain chip. The elite themselves will still have to work it out amongst themselves as to what really connotes being one of the members of the elite. Is it just birth? Is it money and birth? Is the intellect money and birth? So they'll still have to work that out amongst themselves.
So some of those who are planning it for the rest of us will get to partake in what happens to the rest of us.
Oh, absolutely. And as I said, that was Charles Galton Darwin. Lord Bertrand Russell was another one, old member of the British aristocracy, who wrote many books on this agenda. He even wrote about the next coming language, which would be mathematically induced. And I think he was talking about the computer digitalized system. Because if a brain implant was put in you, you wouldn't need any language anymore except mathematics or the binary code, just like a computer. So he wrote about the same system coming into place. Zbigniew Brzezinski, in his book Between Two Ages, mentions the technotronic era where time is coming. He said it was actually there, where through advanced science they could control the emotions and the minds of the public without the public's knowledge. And he's talking about the electronic warfare techniques they have through HARP and EMP and this kind of thing. So this is being done now. And what I've always realized is when the big boys put out books by themselves, not someone else ghostwriting it for them, when they write these books, they mean what they say and they always follow through with it.
Can they put it in print and not have someone call their hands on it and put a halt to it?
Because the general population suspend their disbelief. We make excuses for them. Well, I hear what he says, but he can't really mean it. Because I wouldn't do that. Therefore, they wouldn't do that. That's how we think. We don't realize we're dealing with psychopaths.
So you're saying they really will do it?
Oh, absolutely. Again, going back to their books in the 1700s, the 1800s, and so on, when any of the big boys put something in writing, it was always followed through. they don't make wish lists and hang them out there to dry.
Okay, we are up against a break, and folks, we're talking tonight with someone who's done a lot of study in this topic that we have discussed several times on this show, and that is the whole idea of being chipped. When we open the telephone lines, the telephone number, toll-free, is 1-800-289-1092. We'll be right back. And welcome back. My guest this evening is Alan Watt, and we are talking about some pretty heavy stuff, actually. I wanted to talk with someone who's done some research at this. You know, I've read a couple of articles to you, and we've discussed this matter of chipping, but I wanted to talk with someone who's done some research at this, and Alan has. So, Alan, got a couple of questions for you. Will this implanting of chips, will this take place worldwide?
Yeah, that is the goal, is to be a worldwide thing for all peoples beneath the elite's rule. That's what's on the cards for sure, yeah.
Is there any way for us to escape it?
Well, looking at what they've done in the past, they generally cover all their bases before they introduce something. They don't like to forbid you to get around something. They simply make it impossible for you to live otherwise. We see that with even the money system, or even the homesteading system. All the old laws that used to be on the books are gone. They've blocked out the loopholes, and they coerce you into things. In fact, many people, the way it's going in this insidious step-by-step technique, many people will actually go for it and want it. We see this even just with the chips that are being implanted into hands and arms in places like Spain and Holland for the nightclubs. You probably read about that in the newspapers.
Actually, I have not, so why don't you tell us about it?
About at least a year ago, a company based in California, for some reason, I think they went over to Holland, maybe because the Dutch were easier to manipulate, I don't know. But they opened up a super nightclub in Holland. So they're using the Young's hormonal drive as usual to get this through. And to get into the club, you needed a chip implant, and a registered nurse does the implant, just injects it into your skin. And the implant itself, typical of all these digital angel type implants, it has a type of protoplasmic cover or coating on it, and it integrates with your tissue around it so that you can't just pull it out. It's in there, it won't move. And they can charge that just like a charge card with a prepayment, and you don't have to pull out money or carry money into the club once you're inside. It's all deducted automatically from this chip that's preloaded. So that was started up, and then the man who was in charge of this just happened, as in the newspapers here, just happened to be a member, or an ex-member, as he said, of the NSA, which I thought was interesting. He's in charge of setting these clubs up across the planet. And then it's opened up one in Spain, and that's doing big business too. And what they also said at some of these international meetings to do with chipping, they would give it snob appeal. So you could literally have your bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, you see. That's how it's been marketed. So many people are going for this without any qualms.
You mentioned earlier that they would be able to transmit information and thoughts directly into our head with this. Does that mean that they will eventually be putting these chips into people's heads, or can they just put it into their hand and it'll still work?
Personally, although they mentioned putting it right into their head, probably the back of the head, just like the Matrix movie, which is probably part of the conditioning. I don't think they even have to do that as long as it's into a nerve, it attaches itself to a nerve somewhere. That's all it really needs.
And it both receives and transmits, is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Well, one of the observations that I made on this show is that if you've got a transmitter inside your body, I cannot see a possibility that it will not damage you at the cellular level because it's sending out a radiated frequency. No matter how small that power is, it's in there with the cells of your body, and I think that is going to be a major health issue. What do you think?
It's possible, but what I've also realized over many years is that at this level of knowledge, which is the bottom level, that's from your professorship down, that's the bottom level of knowledge. There's always another two above that. So we how far ahead this kind of stuff is, it boggles the mind, really. When they can create a covering which is a form of tissue itself, which will integrate with your own cells, including putting out tendrils into your nervous system. I mean, this is beyond what professors understand. So it's a higher technology that's kept secret from, like most things are, they're kept secret from the public. But they have this ability here.
If it is secret from the public, how did you find out about it?
I've talked to so many people over the years, in higher positions, you might say. When you're in music, too, and you travel to different countries, you get to meet some of the upper politicians or bureaucrats, which are even more important. And the little things that were said over the years start to form impressions in your mind and come together and start to make sense. They all knew this was coming, the society was coming, through all the little quips I got over the different countries. But it took a long time for it even penetrate to me how far ahead they were. When you look at some of the old Masonic books to do with the travels, for instance, of one of the Master Masons of Britain, and he went to France in the early 1800s, or late 1700s actually, and he saw that his host, who was in charge of the Grand Orient Lodge, talk into what seemed to be a silver tea set that actually rang, and the man picked up the lid of something and talked. And he heard a voice. He said, "This is a person in another country." This was before Alexander Bell had his telephone lines anywhere. The reason you keep hold of power is by never telling the public exactly what level you're at. So whatever is given to the public and reinforced by popular science and all the books out there is actually obsolete. Whenever they say they're working towards something, they've already done it.
So what's going to happen to people like you?
They'll probably go the way of the dodo bird. I don't think they're so much worried about guys like me. As long as they can get the young, as I say, who are already being geared for this oneness, this we are the world stuff, the globalistic society. That's their targeted population. They might just let the older ones gradually die off because they always work through gradualism. Yeah.
So what happens, though, if they convert the economic system to the chip? You have to have the chip to buy or sell.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a very meager existence for you.
In a sense, yes and no. I mean, I can do with it most things that people really need if I have to. I don't take the same value in material things as most people do. And I don't have to be in the same system, producing and consuming. And that's the definition of a good world citizen from the UN, as a good producer and consumer. I don't have to go that route. And I think, too, when you understand that one day you're going to die anyway, things drastically change. Your whole world view changes. When you're 20 and you go into the military, you think you're impervious to all missiles and bombs because you're indestructible. Death is a foreign thing that happens to other people. When you're older, you realize you're mortal and one day you're going to get yours. So you don't have that same worry about going along or to get along. You don't have to.
Well, I asked earlier about, is there any way to escape this? Because I think that once people realize that it's really happening, Then, when it's too late, you will have resistors.
Yeah, and they know this because H.G. Wells, another famous person in the literary world back in the early 1900s mainly, was picked at school by Professor Huxley, Thomas Huxley, the grandfather Aldous Huxley, or the father, and he was trained for his position as a PR man, and he also worked for the British government as a propagandist. But H.G. Wells, in his non-fiction work, various works, he wrote a lot of non-fiction, although he's better known for The Time Machine and Shape of Things to Come, which again was a prediction of their plan. That's why he knew it. But he also wrote the Outlines of History, Part 1 and 2, and in there he talks about the different classes of people and ethnic races of people that would even be allowed to survive in a category long before Adolf Hitler came out with the same thing. And it was all to do with economic value. No one would exist without an economic function. And anybody who couldn't mimic the white man, as he said, with a work ethic would have to be wiped out. They'd have no purpose. And so H.G. Wells went through that, but he also said that those who think they are opposing the New World Order, and he used that term, are actually fighting a lost cause, because what they're fighting to retain is a part of the system that was only a phase of the same elite's system. They're updating their system that served its purpose into the next phase. And actually what he says there is true.
So people who fight to retain what we thought was the good and the right, well, that good and right was only a phase in their system.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And he wrote about that in the early 1900s.
Is the United Nations going to be the world government, or will something replace it?
It was set up to eventually become world government. I don't think it will be the ultimate one. See, and UN itself, and you understand how even through the French Revolution, much of the same UN resolutions were passed during the French Revolution. They were adopted into the UN, even to do with the Department of Population Control. So it's an ongoing movement done through the centuries by esoteric sects to get to the stage. And UN in French is un, which is one. That's what it means, one. The world will become as one.
What is, we have a minute until break. What is the Department of Population Control?
It's literally a part, it's integrated with the Doctor Who's, I call it, which is the health organization, the World Health Organization. Part of the World Health Organization is population control or reduction. It's a bigger part of what we call family planning. Now it's the global family planning.
So it's the idea is to get rid of me.
Oh, yes.
Well, when we come back from the break, I want to talk with you about why would they want to get rid of people. It would seem to me if they're going to chip everyone, they've got slaves, and the more slaves they have, the more prosperity they would have. But obviously there's something about it all that makes them think they're better off with fewer people. So we'll discuss that when we get back from this next break. And folks, in the next hour, I will open the phone lines, 1-800-289-1092. We'll be right back. My guest this evening is Alan Watt, and we're talking about the chip. We may get into some other things, but right now we're talking about the chip. Alan, before we go to our top of the hour break, which is an ID break, I would like to ask you to address this. Why population control? And let me again state why I have that question. If we're all going to be sort of electronic zombies, and we will do whatever we're told to do, it would seem to me that the controllers would be better off having more slaves. We would produce more. Why population control?
It's to do with, we have, again, our view of what economy is. There's always another side, another perception of things. When you think about the needs of the individual to survive, we always think of money first. We don't think of food. We think of money to get the food. So money itself is just a tool of the elite to get us to work for them. It always was. That's why money was introduced. And they tax it back from us. And as long as we accept it, we'll put our labor in, as long as we get paid. So we worked their scheme into existence. We've done that for centuries and centuries, working towards this global takeover bit by bit to global empire. Our function eventually, doing that will eventually be over. And if you had a brain chip, you wouldn't have to be entertained maybe 6 hours per day. You could literally work all day. You might, in fact, they've already said they could stimulate the brain so you wouldn't even have to sleep. You wouldn't get bored doing what you're doing because you'd have no ability to have abstract thought or daydream or even see how miserable you were. It would be meaningless. So you would be much more efficient. So a much smaller population can do the work of many, you see. They don't need all the masses anymore. And plus,
same work, burn up fewer resources.
Exactly, because everyone at the moment, in a post-industrial era, we're still living in the mode of an industrial era. That's why they gave us the automobile. You had to have a scattered society able to travel to wherever the work was during that era. And
cars are chipped now.
They're chipped, and we know they're going to phase them out. That's why they haven't given you any later technology to take over from gasoline. They knew at the beginning how long probably would have it for. And the UN's already said that in the Agenda 21, they want the people to be put into these habitat areas, which are really extensions of the cities. And there'll be no private property. There'll be rental only. No private transportation. And so we won't need vehicles. So this has all been planned out before we were even born. This whole phase.
How will we get around if we don't have cars?
I think what they're talking about really is what the UN said many years ago was that in habitat areas you'll have communities that will work on one particular thing for the world, so you'll produce something that the world will need, and you won't have to travel outside your community. That's what they meant.
You will not want to travel, right?
You'd have no need to. You wouldn't. You literally will not. You'd be more like a robot than a person. In fact, you wouldn't. For their point of view, it's tremendously efficient. They won't have to give you education for so many years to do a job. They can literally download it into you what you do, and you'll do it. You could be a surgeon one day and mucking out a buyer or on a farm the next. It won't matter to you because you won't be cognizant.
How close do you think we are to this happening?
They have the ability to do it now. It's all ready to go. It's just a matter of conditioning the public to actually... It's so amazing how they get us to comply with their wishes, so we almost beg them to give us something. And I was thinking about all the hype and crisis they're bringing on now. Terror, as Aldous Huxley said, is a very good tool for mind control. And so if you terrorize the public through real or imaginary threats to come, economic, food, disease, etc., if you keep up the stress of panic and gradually increase it, the time would come when most people will break down like Pavlov's dogs, and you'll beg them to take the pain of being aware from you. Please take this away, and they'll offer the solution. If you take this, it's better than any tranquilizer. And you'd be surprised how many will just go for it.
It amazes me how many people believe that it is actually possible to create a situation where you are safe from terrorism.
Oh, yes.
A real terrorist will find a way.
I know the IRA had a saying that the bomber always gets through, you know. And it's true, because you can't have eyes everywhere. If they're determined, they would do what they're going to do.
I'm not opposed to safety measures trying to make it safer, but the idea that, I hear it on the news whenever something happens, people are asking, how could something like this happen? Why didn't the government do this? Why didn't the government do that?
Yeah.
Well, look, there's no place on the planet more militarized than Israel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they still get hit. They have now entered back into Gaza, and as a result of something like 130 missile attacks and some kidnappings since they relinquished Gaza to the Palestinians, and they were still getting hit.
Yeah.
And and there are people with suicide bombers that still get into Israel.
And they have their spies everywhere within the enemy camps and informers, and it still happens.
It still happens. And so I think it's unreasonable for people to believe that the government can keep them absolutely safe. It's not possible. But in the hope that they can, they certainly are willing to give up a lot of freedom.
It's astounding to listen to some of the comments on radio and call-in shows, and people actually saying, I'm a good American, the government can come into my home at any time, night or day, and go through my stuff, I'm a good citizen, I've nothing to worry about. That tells me something's happened to their brain, actually, and I mean that physically. I really mean that.
Well, something has happened. We have this thing called the Fourth Amendment. And the Fourth Amendment says they can do that if they have a warrant. And no warrant shall issue, but upon probable cause and supported by an oath or affirmation.
Yeah.
And particularly describing the person or things to be seized and the location to be searched. And so they're giving that away. Astounds me, but it's a reality.
It's a reality. Yeah.
We'll continue, and we'll open the phone lines when we come back from this break. So don't go away. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest is Alan Watt. Alan, we've opened the phone line, and we have a caller, so let's go to the phone line. Caller, you're live on the Kevin Smith Show. If you will, tell us your first name and where you're calling from.
Hi, Alan. This is Alex from Toronto.
Okay, yeah, Alex.
Hi, I've heard a lot of people mention the RFID chip. You heard about it all over the internet. But what I've never heard anyone mention is this Loyola University chip. This seems like a very sophisticated thing that no one's ever mentioned. Do you have any proof of this?
Yeah, I got a fellow to download the 600 pages that came out of that university meeting at the time, and then it went off their website, so I was just in time. Yeah.
Are you going to post it on your website or post some of it? Or
I probably will. When I moved, I put the disc in a box as a matter of just fishing it out. And I have heard I've done another meeting at the same university since then, but I don't have information on that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, folks, 1-800-289-1092 is the number to call. 1-800-289-1092. It's toll-free throughout the United States and Canada. Doesn't work in Alaska, however. So if you're in Alaska, you're going to have to send me a flash message. Flash@KevinSmithShow.com. And for all the rest of the world, Flash@KevinSmithShow.com. Caller, you're live on the Kevin Smith Show. Your first name and where are you calling from?
Hi, Kevin. It's Al from New York.
You know.
How you doing tonight?
Great.
Got a couple things that on my mind. First of all, I listened to Alan's recording, and I think he's referring to a company in Japan called FEC Inc. that makes this chip. Now, I believe also that they licensed it to the Malaysian government, and it's called the MM chip, that they can put into bullets, humans, whatever. So if anybody wants to, maybe Alan pick up on that, or anybody else want to do their DVD, they can go to Google and put in FEC Inc. or the M chip and Malaysia, and they should come up with some information.
Okay, Alan, is that a chip that you're familiar with, the MM chip?
I don't know if it's the same one, but I know that Sony, a few years ago in all the papers, had an article published to do with this method of transferring. What they did was they used what they said was brain cells, human brain cells, kept them alive somehow, and interfaced them in a tank with silicone chips to see if messages could be transmitted successfully through the chips, through the brain cells. And this was the company, I think, which eventually came up with this new type of chip, which is ready to go, and which does have a brain cell type coating on it that can integrate with your nervous system. So that, I think it was Sony that led the field there.
Well, Libby, I believe Japan is the leader in RFID chips. Also, with the GPS, introducing GPS systems.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the other thing, since the microchip is I would say, disruptive technology. Just like free energy would, if it was to be introduced into society, wouldn't you think that there'd be some difficulty along the way introducing it? In other words, at what level, who gets chipped and who doesn't get chipped? Does the people that work for the insurance companies get chipped? Or don't they get chipped?
Well, once the chip was eventually put in, you wouldn't need insurance companies. You won't have the same kind. In fact, you won't have what we think of as an economy as such. There won't be a reward system in the new system that's to come in. In fact, even the UN has said that the next type of citizen that will be created will be a world citizen who works to serve the world state. That will be their function. And Bertrand Russell, once again in his books, said that a form of payment will be put into a person's bank account at the beginning of every week. And there'll be a type of credit system or a ration card type system. And so many numbers will get put into your bank. And this will be used as a form of social control, so that if you buck the system or don't agree, your credits will be withheld and you can't pay your rent or buy food. And at the beginning of every week, the same amount of money starts off again. You can't save it up. So you wouldn't be able to work your way up into this particular class system you have now. They're talking about a totally new way of living in the system to come. But the old values will be gone.
Financial market.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard me, Kevin. How would it affect the international financial market?
It would be the same thing there, because the whole new system will not be based on a private reward type economy at all. That's the system they're going for. They use the old system to get us to work for them, and we built every machine. We'll put our own children through universities that work in their scientific laboratories. That system served them very well, and with advanced sciences, etc., they no longer need to keep us going with this punishment reward type system. Just like money, as I say, is a tool for them, it's the public that have to believe that money is real. To the big boys, it's a means to an end, and it's almost at that stage anyway.
I'll give some others a chance to call in, Kevin.
All right, thanks for the call, Al. One of the really frightening things, and I don't know that it's related, but one of the really frightening things that I myself watched on television and heard with my ears was Madeleine Albright when she was addressing the United Nations, stated that she had always viewed herself as a child of the United Nations. And, that was pretty frightening because she's supposed to be a child of America if she's going to be the Secretary of State.
Yeah. And what's also interesting is that everybody who is assigned to work at the United Nations swears an oath that they will leave their nation behind and they're now a world citizen. That's been there since it's set up. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that when you do any kind of contract work that's under the United Nations, you sign a contract stating that you will not speak against them in any way.
Yeah, yes, not only that, people don't realize that you don't just apply for a job at the UN. The UN simply took over, or was the phoenix or chameleon that changed in from the League of Nations that was on the go from 1917. And they already had all of these departments set up. And what you're seeing today in the bureaucratic side of it, and these are the important ones, the bureaucrats, these are maybe third, fourth generation bureaucrats of civil servants, offspring, and they go have their own private school to train them to be UN bureaucrats. So it's an in-house training they have with a different education altogether.
They also have the UN University in Tokyo.
Yes, and I heard only once did I hear the actual head, the bureaucratic head of a department speaking on behalf of the UN, and this woman did not even mince words with the public like a politician would. He would try and dance around and be polite or something, even though he was lying through his teeth. But this woman just simply dictated what her department was going to do for the world and how we would all obey it, etc. So you're looking at a very arrogant, in-house trained bunch of brewers, really, at least on a bureaucratic level.
Let's go back to the phone line. You're live on the Kevin Smith Show. Your first name and where are you calling from?
This is Brent from Wyoming.
Hey, Brent.
And I'd like to say it's good to hear good Scotland discussion on the radio.
Aye, it is that.
I have cousins in Scotland. But you said, from what you said, it sounds like this has been going on gradually since money was introduced in Hammurabi's court.
Yes, yeah. Money is a tool, as I say. It's a tool. It reminds me of the experiments that laboratories do and schools do with rats, where you can initially get a rat who's a thinker, a free rat, you might say, non-domesticated, and put him in a cage with a pile of food there, and he'll eat the food. But if you train him gradually, take away that pile of food and train him to pull a lever and a seed comes down, and after a while, once he's used to that, a few weeks, put the pile of food back there next to the lever, he'll still pull that lever to get that one seed and then ignore the big pile of food. And that's what money does. It trains us to bypass our natural needs for survival, and it trains into a system where someone has control over that system. And that's why Rothschild, when he was given the Bank of England, he said, give me the control of the money and I care not who makes the laws, because he knew that he would be the guy that made the laws, because the whole economy bases around the central bank and the lending. And prime ministers go to the central bank and borrow money every year, cap in hand.
Or here we come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, Brent, thank you. 1-800-289-1092 is the number to call, so free. If you wish to talk with Alan Watt, if you have a comment or a question, or you can send me a flash message, flash@kevinshow.com, if you're outside of our toll-free area, which is all of North America, okay? Excluding Alaska. I don't know why, but Alaska doesn't participate in this toll-free system that we've got. So if you're in Alaska or anywhere else in the world, you can send me a flash message, flash@kevinsmithshow.com. Alan, the money system is a system that, as the last caller pointed out, has been around for centuries, literally millennia.
Yeah.
And so this system towards a one world system has been around for millennia.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, it has, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I really think, I look at Revelations in the New Testament, and I don't see it as a prophecy, I see it as a plan. And that's what I believe it really is. That's why it's written in such mystical, occult-type language, is traditional of the mystery religions. So,
let's discuss that with you in just a moment. First, let's go back to the phone line. Caller, you are live on the Kevin Smith Show. Your first name and where are you calling from?
Hi, Kevin and Alan. It's George from New York, and I have a question for Alan.
Okay, go ahead.
On the shift, it appears that what Alan's saying is we're on the verge of the population reduction and then the shifting of the human race that's left. When they turn you into a zombie, will they do it by degrees?
I think that's the key there. It's going to be promoted out there as a form of relaxing very tense people, very overstressed people. Initially, the youngsters will go for it because they'll think they'll be like the character in the Lawnmower Man, who can literally be, or Neo in the Matrix, a superhero. But once everyone has it, or enough people have it, I think the switch will get thrown and the real function will kick in. And that's what they mean by you'll be altered in the blink of an eye. It'll be instantaneous.
Or the other one, scripture. Yeah, because I think, they may have it, and they probably do have it in people already.
Mm-hmm.
But some people will go and there'll be no effect, and they'll say, well, there's no real effect, I'm still seeing, right? But then when they fully activate it, you're gone and you won't know anything, right?
That's it. It'll be the end of the individual that you were. In fact, you couldn't even have a memory to try and figure out who you were. It will be unimportant. You'll be a robot, basically. Yeah.
Robot or cyborg, but not by your... I have nothing against somebody turning themselves into their own kind of cyborg. Matter of fact, it would be interesting, but being a forced cyborg or a robot, but you're no longer you. That's what you're saying.
That's it.
But the point is that this could happen much, much quicker than people are expecting.
Until they come along with the solution. And you'll give up everything for some peace, you see.
It would be as a form of suicide.
It would be, yeah.
And there's people who are saying, quite a few people, that something to happen this fall. That it could come. Some people are saying October, some people are saying, I'm not saying anything, I'm just relaying what I see on the internet. So, this thing is theoretically, what you're saying is ready to go. It could happen anytime. They could put this plan into operation.
They certainly could. There's not a thing you'll see in Revelations that cannot be done scientifically today. Whereas plague, famine, fire from heaven, they can do that with satellites. Earthquakes, they can do that with the HARP technology. It's in the treaty in the UN. So all of those things can be done through science. And I'm sure that's why most of these facilities were built. Yeah.
With respect to the word of the Creator, wherever one may see it, but I think you're right on target when you're saying they gave this book and they're laughing. I've heard you say before they put this book and taken it out, put it back in, take it out, that they put it in as their revealing their plan for the future, and they're laughing at the silly people who go along with their silly religion that has been given to them. With all due respect to the Creator and people's beliefs, I'm saying this ties in where I'm complaining about,
Yeah. And you look at the New Agers too, and what's phenomenal in the New Age movement is as I say, this, it doesn't matter what name they give a particular sect or group or therapy even, or encounter group. The whole idea is this oneness will all become one. And that's a mantra they chant. It's been taught everywhere. That's all by direction. It's not by happenstance or coincidence. It's getting them all psychologically prepared to literally be one.
Hey, George, thank you for your call. We're going to have to release the line in order to take more calls. but very interesting concepts that you brought up, and I appreciate that call. And he brought up something that I would like to explore with you a little bit, Alan. He brought up your thoughts about, as best I can understand it, the book of Revelation. You see that not as a book that really belongs in the Bible, but was put in there by the one worlders, is that it?
There's no doubt. Revelations is written in a language, a particular style, which is exoteric for the public and esoteric for the higher secret societies. Anything that a deity would give you should be straightforward, you would think. But meanwhile, you still got Christian sects today who would kill each other tomorrow over the meanings of phrases, etc. It's so obscure to the individual that yeah, through science, see, the ancient religions are so far removed from what we think of today as traditional, say, Christianity or Judaism. They had completely different meanings thousands of years ago. Even Judaism 2,000 years ago called itself an active religion, where they have to find their way to the deity, a deity which even to them was unknown. They couldn't define it as being this or that. Even today that's taught in rabbinical schools. You cannot make a deity human, whereas the Christian version, they've made a human-type deity with human emotions and thoughts and feelings. But traditionally in the Middle East, as in Judaism, the deity was something that they would find their way to through intellect and through science. And it was in the Renaissance period in Europe this blossomed forth in Queen Elizabeth I's time. In her court, in fact, her court was run by Kabbalists and John Dee when they integrated the Kabbalah into Christianity, and they actually called it Christian Kabbalah in those days, where science and mysticism would combine together to create a destiny. Rather than have it happen randomly, they would create and direct a destiny for the world. And John Dee, who worked right at the court for Queen Elizabeth I and who had a lodge, or was a Crucian lodge, coined the term the British Empire and gave it to the Queen. And he put forth his plan for a united world, starting with a British Empire that would be based on a form of free trade. And any country that would not join and go under the same rulership or system, we can say, today they'd say democracy, would be excluded from trading until they would give in. And that was the beginning of this movement in the 1500s to where we are today. They would take science, which was not to be available to all the public either, and direct the course of nature. And you see this fervent activity in the 1500s. Nothing much happened up till then, and suddenly all this activity into the sciences, as though they had to catch up suddenly. And sure enough, by Kabbalah and by astronomy, because they work, as the ancients do, with the zodiac, which works in sort of 2,600-year periods. They had to get this done by the age of Aquarius, as they say. And this is taught in all the higher mystery schools and some of the lesser ones. And the age of Aquarius is even written into the Bible in an esoteric way, because the character Jesus in the New Testament tells two of his disciples to go and fetch him a colt. And they were to ask the man carrying the pitcher of water. So Jesus has always been symbolized by the fish for Pisces, and that's in all the museums in Europe where the early Christians came in. That was their symbol. It wasn't the cross, it was the Piscean symbol. And of course, the man carrying the pitcher of water signified the term or the length of time he would rule, which was into the age of Aquarius. So this is a mystery school that's been here for thousands of years, and they give you your exoteric religion, and most people never figure out the esoteric, but it is there. Yeah.
All right. Let's give the telephone number again, and let me say, if you call and it quits ringing, that means you're on hold. Just hold. Some of you will be able to hear the show, and some will not because of various factors on your phone line. But it's 1-800-289-1092. 1-800-289-1092. If you call, it quits ringing, that means you're on hold. All right, and we'll get to you as we can. So, from your point of view, then, Revelation is the one world, new world order plan rather than Scripture.
Yeah, it's not it's even called Revelations revealing. You don't reveal a prophecy. What you reveal is a plan, and that's why it's called Revelations. The revealing. It's revealed.
So do you have any thoughts on the 666?
Oh, I know many of the meanings of it. I know the esoteric meaning, which most Christians wouldn't like either, but it's there, you know.
What is it?
The name of the beast was 666.
Yes.
And it's right there in Revelations, where all the main characters dance around their God. And they say his name is Holy, Holy, Holy. And Holy, Holy, Holy in Kabbalah is 666. So the God is the beast. Yeah.
Oh, that's a mind blower.
It is only if you haven't gone into the occult understanding of things. In Judaism, it would be easier to understand because Judaism is based on a balance of two opposites, you might say, always in conflict, very similar to Zoroastrianism. They're also about the balance. You can't have one without the other. And so, in some phases of humanity, we are the beast, and other times we are the saviors, you might say. So that's really what it signifies. It's the two in one. In fact, in Judaism, the deity is both male and female. It's a hermaphroditic figure, always was. And that's in traditional Jewish writings. If Adam was created in the exact image of God, the deity, and the Greek actually means that, the exact sameness. And of course, in Jewish theology, that means that it's strange how they change all the words in English, but in Hebrew and Aramaic, a compartment was taken from Adam, and it wasn't his side.
Well, where was it?
It's down where his genitals would be. All through the westernized versions for Christians, you always get this piercing in the side, or Jacob swore an oath on his father's thigh. They always changed the words for politeness' sake, but it was always to do with the genitals. And so the compartment was taken, so that was the female part. And from that, Eve was made, which signified the deity was both male and female. That's the esoteric part of it, of Judaism.
Now, I have a question that I would like to ask about, we talked about this a little bit earlier, when I said, will it be worldwide? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I thought about and didn't ask at the time, and I'd like to go back to that, is if it's going to be a worldwide thing, is it going to happen simultaneously throughout the world?
It's all ready to go in all parts of the world except the Middle East.
And why is that?
Because all the other countries, if you really look at them, they've all been standardized into the same system, with a central bank, with the same process of what we think is democracy, with the same types and systems and levels of bureaucracies, same money system. They're all the same. They're all clones of each other, except for the Middle East.
And so what's going to happen with the Middle East?
They either come in or get destroyed. The whole world is being standardized right now. In Yugoslavia, when the UN suddenly decided to go in there, even after the movie Wag the Dog gave us the whole agenda, and they followed the movie, and Yugoslavia wasn't on the central banking system either. You'll notice it's always countries who have not gone on to the central and international banking system of the World Bank. That's the countries they're going after.
Interesting. East Timor refused to go into debt to the International Bank, and they're having a bit of a revolution over there now.
Yes.
All right, folks, we'll be back right after these messages. 1-800-289-1092, if that's the number to call. Or you can send me a flash message. You must send it to flash@kevinsmithshow.com. If you send it to any other of our email addresses, it will not be read until after the show. flash@kevinsmithshow.com. Back to the Kevin Smith Show. We are talking this evening with Alan Watt. And the telephone number, if you have a question or comment that you would like to make, you can do that toll free. I pay for the call. 1-800-289-1092 is the number to call. It is toll free throughout the United States and Canada. 1-800-289-1092. Also, you can send me a flash message if you're outside that toll free area. Be sure that you send it to flash@kevinsmithshow.com. All right, let's go to the phone line. You're live on the Kevin Smith Show, so if you'll tell us your first name and your where you're calling from.
Hey again, Kevin. I just wanted to ask Alan if he subscribes to any personal belief or a personal God or a religion or anything.
Well, personally, all I go with is my own experience, because ultimately, if you're made by a creator, then why would you need someone else to tell you what it all means? That's mind control when establishments come forward and tell you the meanings of things or the meaning of life into a tunnel. So I'd rather not get into a pigeonhole, because once you're in a pigeonhole, your worldview is like Plato's cave, and the only entrance is where the light comes through. But you can't see the other sides or the top and the bottom. So you must go, I only go by my own experiences.
I just want to make another comment. I don't know if it was Alan or another talk show, radio cast. Somebody said that we only see 4%, and the other 96% we don't see because of other dimensions. How do we know that those that are planning this can see? Maybe there is a real God, and they can't see it.
I don't think I've said that, although I understand that it's true enough, we only see within a limited spectrum. If we see in a higher frequency, we would see light in different colors and this kind of thing. However, why do we even have to go off into speculation? Because if you're made perfectly, surely that's all you would need.
So, I mean, I would think that man falls short of perfection.
Oh, I wouldn't disagree with you there. There's no doubt we have a tremendous egos, and it's ego which is pushing this whole agenda through science. I think that this is the key to everything. If the world, in an allegorical form, meaning nature in itself, was Eden, there's only one road out of Eden, the one that we've taken, and that's through science. Through science, we would conquer nature, and that's what they always meant in the Rosicrucian and in the higher eventual lodges that came out of it. By understanding nature, they would conquer nature and all parts of nature. And what they claim is they're here in all Masonic lodges. They're taught to perfect that which was left imperfect, which includes man himself. However, they want to do it through science, and we can see everything that they've done to the planet on the roads to this utopia of theirs. The horror shows, the wars, the destruction of the planet, and then they go and give us the glasses, the rose-tinted glasses. They sell us them to see it through their perspective, to get us back into order again and on board. So it's all to do with views and perceptions, how you see things. We are trained in this system always to see from one side but never another. And to get above this and see this, you have to get out of the boxes they've given us, the pigeonholes, and get above it all and look at it all, and then you see the pattern, you see the direction we're in, and you see where they're going. And there's no pretense about this. They do publish where they want to take us, and they've been doing it for centuries.
What do you think? The ancients had a lot of science and civilization. How come they failed? Like the Tower of Babel and other things that man was trying to do with their own culture, either in the Middle East or South America. We see the advanced cultures, the astronomy and so forth. How come they didn't continue on their own, expedition, as their own lives that build up from there?
Well, I think the evidence shows that in the ancient world, the Neolithic cultures, there was a universal, a world system at that time. We can't get away from the fact that you'll see the same types of buildings, artifacts, walls, construction, standing stones across the planet. Even in Australia, they have the circles of standing stones. And we see the massive walls in Peru with such incredible stonemasonry where they've cut them perfectly to fit each other. And never mind the weights of them. They definitely had those kind of technologies. However, we don't know how advanced they really were in other ways. And I don't think that they really lost it, except perhaps through some catastrophe. Now, Sumer has it on record in the annals of their histories that at one time, before Sumer came along, continents sank into the sea, old continents and kingdoms, and new land came up in certain parts. So it's possible there was some kind of change in the Earth's crust, some catastrophe, a natural phenomena. But I don't think the whole idea of the sciences were lost. I think they continued covertly and secretly behind the scenes always. It's in this the 20th century they came forward more boldly, although they started to come forward in the 1500s, as I say, through the Rosicrucian and the Hermetic cults that sprung up in Europe, especially England. So I don't think they ever really lost it, you know.
Okay, Alan. Thank you. Kevin?
Okay, thanks, Al. All right, folks, 1-800-289-1092. That's the number to call. Toll free, or send me a flash message. I announce this every show that the only email that I read during the show is one account called flash@kevinsmithshow.com. And yet, at the end of every show, I check all of my email and find people sent questions to the guest, but you sent them to other email addresses that don't get read during the show. Flash@kevinsmithshow.com. Caller, you're live on the air. Your first name and where are you calling from?
Hi, Kevin. Michelle from Quebec.
Okay, Michelle from Quebec. Go ahead.
The way it sounds, the guest is talking about world history. I have the creativity. How about the world class?
Okay. Alan, what happens once we all get chipped? What happens to creativity?
As far as they're concerned, and this came out with the Darwinian era, as far as they're concerned, according to Darwin and the philosophies that came out of Darwin, then all of the geniuses, you might say, who could come up through natural selection have already made it. So in other words, the families which were already established in the 1700s with power and wealth and intellect and education, the very fact they had made it prove that they were the end product of evolution. That's what they believe. And that the commoners would stay commoners from then on. And so to them it's no loss. They believe they have the genius class within their own genes.
What did they do? What would they say about Bill Gates?
Oh, Bill Gates wasn't a self-made man.
You know, he is a college dropout.
No, it doesn't matter. I mean, Bill Gates is related to the Gates family that was advisors to old Nelson Rockefeller. In fact, Gates and Mackenzie King, that was his reward, Mackenzie King, for working for Rockefeller to give him a good PR image after Rockefeller turned a militia loose on the miners and killed them all. Gates and Mackenzie King were brought in to give him a PR over image, and now he became the benefactor of humankind. So the Gates family is an old family. They're always connected. Mackenzie King became the Prime Minister of Canada. That was his reward.
Michelle, do you have another question?
I just wanted to say that everybody gets tips and what's the next step? Just stagnation, and then we all die?
Well, I think what Alan was just talking about is that we don't need any creativity from the commoners. All those who have creative genius have already risen to the top. They won't be chipped. You will be.
Yeah.
You'd like to see what?
The guy who sits the fort, you and me, he's a built, but somebody's doing things. And I go up and kind of see.
Well, Alan said earlier, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, that they'll just download the information into your head how to fix the fort.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be your job. You'll fix forts.
Where everybody's pissed, and all of a sudden everybody gets turned off.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a heck of a scenario. Let me release the line by getting the answer. Alan, what about that? We have a solar flare.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody with a chip. The chip just kind of goes on the fritz.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all free again. What happens?
I don't even see that. I'll tell you why I don't even see that coming. Is because, as I say, the level of science that we are allowed to know about is bottom level. They're so far ahead, they can certainly cover for solar flares. I've no doubt on that whatsoever. As an example of that, on television, national television in Canada, on the Wendy Mesler show a few years ago, CBC television, Nick Begich demonstrated to the host, to Wendy Mesler, this little handheld gizmo about the size of a TV remote control. They could put music right into the center of your head. You would hear it inside your head. And he said he could easily have put words there just the same. Now, this had to be solid state and microcircuitry to do this kind of thing. And it worked in line of sight up to any distance. And he had a whole table full of this stuff. And he said this was used by the CIA back in the 1950s. This is all obsolete technology. So what they have on them, and now the CIA isn't the highest level, they're a mid-level. So the real boys at the top won't even share their even more advanced stuff with their helpers down below for safety reasons. Yeah.
I've actually seen him demonstrate that in person.
Yes, and he also went over to the European Parliament and demonstrated it there, because it can also make you violently sick depending on the frequency they use. And some of the politicians there were getting up and just suddenly doubling over and throwing up and feeling pain. And he went over and demonstrated that this was possible, that somebody was using this technology on them.
As a result of his appearance there, they passed legislation against the use of this kind of technology.
Which means nothing, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So you're saying this technology is in use in Europe?
Oh, it's in use. And I'll tell you another interesting thing was, it was what's her name now? She was killed. She was married to the guy who lived off of Italy, the prince.
Oh, you're talking about Princess Grace?
Yeah, Princess Grace, that's right.
We'll have to get to that when we come back.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, we're in for our final approach. Got time for one more quick phone call. If you wish to send me a flash message, we've got time from one of those, flash@kevinsmithshow.com. And we'll be back with Alan Watt right after these messages. And welcome back. My guest this evening is Alan Watt. We're talking about some, what I would consider to be rather disturbing information about what he sees coming in the future. And Alan, you're saying it's not too far into the future, right?
It's not too far. I think it's ready, in fact. It's a matter of step by step in the old Fabian style, getting us into a state of panic and crisis until we don't know if we're upside down or sideways through terror, fear, and etc. Eventually, everyone gets to a crisis stage where you break down. And that's what Pavlov was all about. So it was how to destroy the soul of the person, to destroy them, and to sit there and quiver. And then once they got to that stage, then the controller had them for life. They'd do anything they were told. So you can bring the whole population into a crisis stage if you simply keep up the pressure long enough, and then offer the solution to take their pain away. Yeah. These are ancient techniques.
Well, once you're chipped, there's no way out.
Once it's there, that's it. It's bound. It literally intertwines with your own bodily cells. And, well, maybe you could cut it out. However, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a fail-safe device in them, you know.
All right, let's go back to the phone line. Last call. You're live on the Kevin Smith Show. Your first name and where are you calling from?
One more time, Kevin.
All right.
I want to ask Alan about Zachariah Sitchin's work and others that are proclaiming, say, Anunnaki, their visitation to Earth. How does this all fit in with the coming of the New World Order?
Okay.
I don't go along with Sitchin's interpretation. His interpretation is his own. It's unique. No one else agrees with him. And in fact, he's not taken seriously in the university circles. So really, to me, there's two possibilities. That whole Anunnaki. See, Anunnaki literally always meant, even in Egyptian, Anu always meant spirit. Anunnaki meant spirit of the earth. So he's given his own interpretations to fit a story which has been built upon. Now, all that can be built upon a faulty foundation is therefore faulty. It doesn't matter how much speaking comes afterwards and how many repeat it. It doesn't make it true. But there's a lot of work and effort gone into this to make us all believe this, because even in the early 1900s, John Dewey was the first person to say, if we can convince the public of a threat from outer space, they'll all band together to fight it. The whole world will become one. Ronald Reagan used that same phrase in many of his speeches. So this threat from outer space has always been used by the big boys.
So you don't see any validity in the idea of extraterrestrial intelligent beings or people on other planets, races on other planets. You don't buy that?
I don't have to buy it, because what I see are groups of men going into the Bilderberger meetings or the NAFTA meetings, or even before that the European meetings, and signing deals to create our future for us. I don't have to look into space to see aliens doing it. I don't have to shift the blame.
Yeah, but in forgetting about shifting blame, where do you stand on that? Do you think there are extraterrestrial races?
I only go on evidence that I experience. And now I know, here's the thing, I've seen flying saucers. I've seen them near air bases, Air Force bases in Britain. The sciences are so far advanced, we know that they come out the ground at Area 51, another military base. And so as far as I can see on the evidence we have, they are made here by people, scientists. And I don't have to go into outer space to see where the technology came from. When you see the Nick Bagage technology has been kept quiet for all this time, what else has been kept quiet? This is because there are higher levels of sciences that the public never have access to. And that's how you always can maintain control of the public. You don't share power by giving them the latest anything. Yeah.
You know, I've said it many times on this show that during Gulf War I, when the world was absolutely astounded at the high technology guided bombs and so forth, smart bombs they called them, they were being used in Gulf War I. Norman Schwarzkopf said this is obsolete technology.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I mean, everybody's forgotten about the Star Wars scenario during the Reagan years, and they put batteries of satellites, high-tech satellites up there, which could literally irradiate a whole continent if they all worked in unison. So sure, what gets me is them still putting soldiers into the battlefield with firearms using ball and powder. After 1,000 years, it doesn't matter how they dress up the firearm, it's still the same technique. And it's all incredibly obsolete, so it's to fool the public that this is all that you really have. That's the big con game. Yeah.
Well, you paint a rather ominous picture of the future. Is there any way to forestall it? Is there any way to change it?
Only people's awareness. And ultimately it comes down to an individual thing, because the whole movement for the last 100 years especially has been a movement, actually since the 1800s in Marxism, was unification and collectivism. It was a war against individuality and individualism. And people have to regain their individualism and their own free thought and decision-making capabilities. We've been domesticated to the extent where we take it for granted that somehow we're looked after by some unseen, better type of human than ourselves, and we can sit back and enjoy the sports while these better types can deal with all the problems for us. We're not involved in our decision making, really. We are domesticated.
And so how do we undomesticate ourselves?
It's a matter of reclaiming it, as doing your own investigations into the realities behind things, not that which simply fascinates you. They can fascinate you forever in circles, but the real nitty-gritty stuff, which is often boring reading, but it's your survival hangs upon it. If you don't do that, then you won't know what's happening to you or others, and you're more willing to go along with the crowd. This is a war against the individual. That's what it really is.
So we have 1 minute left. Tell me how I, as an individual, can reclaim being an individual.
It's reassessing everything you've learned in life, then again reassessing it again and proving those things that matter to you, proving for yourself, not on hearsay or because it's fascinating, and then taking that data that you come up with and looking around you at those you care about and saying, is there anything worth hanging on to here? And if you say yes, then you have to stand up as an individual and start disclaiming what is happening to those around you. You have no choice in the matter. The choice, well, what other choice is there? We can watch the sports till it's time for the chip, you know.
Yeah. Well, freedom is a lonely business.
It is, yeah.
It is a lonely business. Alan, I want to thank you for coming on the show tonight, and I certainly hope you'll come back and talk with us again.
It's been a pleasure to be on, yeah.
All right. If you will, just stay on the line with me for a moment. Mm-hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, Alan Watt. And you've been listening to the Kevin Smith Show, where we talk about everything strange and weird and futuristic. We talk about paranormal things, we talk about space, and we talk about the future. I'll be back tomorrow night, and I hope you'll be back. My friends call me Steel Eye. My enemies do too. You can call me whatever you want. Just keep coming back again and again and again. Until tomorrow night. So long, everybody.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.